Good afternoon. I'm going to demonstrate loading the new Windows Transitrace software into a computer. I happen to be showing windows that are on my Linux desktop, but they are quite similar in action to what you would get with a command or a PowerShell on Windows 10, say. We're going to start out by first creating a new directory where I'm going to load and then run the Windows Transitrace software. First, I'll make the directory. We'll call it Transit Demo. Make sure I spelled it properly. That looks good. Now I am going to copy the distribution file, installation file from a USB thumb drive into this file. And in order to do that, I'm going to switch to a slightly different application that is much akin to what you will get when you install a USB drive into a Windows system. It brings up an inspector panel or whatever it is. Understand, I'm not a Windows person. You can select the installation file that is on the USB drive, and then by using the move to command on that window, you can move a copy of it into your new file. Okay, I have opened up a file viewer application on my Linux system. I have also plugged my USB thumb drive into a USB port on the system. You can see the contents of it on the right hand side. And I have changed directory to my Transitrace demo in the left half, and what I intend to do now is to make a copy of the Windows Transitrace install file from the Kingston USB drive into my file. In order to do that, I have to first select it, and then by dragging and dropping, it will make a copy of it over there. I now have that in a copy of it in my Transitrace demo file. From here we will switch back into the command window. Okay, now we're back in the command window. I have loaded it in. If I take a look at what is in my new directory, you can see I never got to it. Okay, hold on. Spell things properly. Okay. Now if I do a list to see it, you can see that my installation file is loaded there. Now, in order to install, it's a very simple process. You merely execute tar with the ZXF options, and that's all there is to it. Now if we look at what's in the file, you'll see a number of files and directories and so forth that are there. At this point, we are ready to begin execution of the Windows Transitrace software. Of course, you must be plugged in, and you must have the Transitrace system plugged in, which I just did. And so in order to do this, we merely type in I think this will work. Yep, here we go. It says, oh, I found the latest one up there. And so what it's doing now is executing some code, and we are now running over in another window the Transitrace software. We'll switch to that shortly. Okay, here we are in the WTT software. Because I started the code with no category specified, the first thing the software does is ask me to select one, which I'll do by pressing the X key. And the system brings up the list of available categories that have come predefined. I'm going to demo using an F2A demo system, so I'll type in 9, or if I chose to, I could actually type in F2A. It's just the numbers are much more convenient. Once I get the category selected, I then have the choice of going into either contest or auto mode. I'm going to go into contest mode, which is where we actually run attempts and so forth and so on. First thing the system asks me for is what is the name registry, in other words, the list of competitors to use. You can either build one on the fly, or you can use a pre-built one. It's recommended that you pre-build one using a text editor or something. I'm going to choose number 10, which is the name registry from the World Champs in 2014, mainly because that's what all of my demos come from. Once you have a name registry established, then it asks you for which competitor you're going to run. I'm going to use the American competitors just because they are familiar to me. I'm going to start out by asking it to be Alex Valashev. What I have running in another computer is a Transitrace simulator, which reads the log file from 2014 and outputs sensor pulses as if there was actually a sensor there. The timer box doesn't know the difference. It's just getting pulses down a cable, and it acts as if it were actually had a sensor and an airplane flying out there, but the simulator is timing things and sending pulses as necessary. So I'm going to start up Alex Valashev's flight. First thing it does is it says press the handle judge switch to start the attempt. Simulator does that. Okay, here we come. It's simulated the handle judge click and is now started an attempt. You can see in the upper left in the green area the start time, and in fact the countdown timer showing how much time is left for the 3 minutes that an F2A attempt is allocated. Alex's flight, it takes him somewhere on the order of 30 seconds to get started and flying before the laps start to show up. And here they come. Now this screen is nothing but an information screen. The final result screen will come up with the completion of the flight. But you'll also notice that there is some information in the upper right hand corner of the screen that shows when the timing has started, count-in has started, when the timing is complete, so forth and so on. If you can watch up there, you can see it happening. And you can see Alex's flight is progressing. The timing has ended, meaning that he got his full 9 timed laps in. And he has landed, and the code is smart enough to say, well, he's not doing anything, so he landed. And a few seconds later, he says it's finished. And it puts up the results screen. This is the lap speeds and the plot of those speeds and the final result of 294.8, which is in fact what Alec turned in 2014. When we're satisfied that this is all correct, the next thing to do will be to press N for a next flight. And when we get there, we can I'll show you some other things, but one point to make here is if you wish to make a printed copy of this screen, the system is set up so that if you type at this point Control P, which is normal for print, it actually doesn't print. What it does is it dumps a copy of the screen off to an image file in the screen images directory that you can then print or look at later with other Windows tools. So right now I'm going to enter in, and of course when I'm finished with that flight, the system says, okay, we're going to get ready to start another one. Who are you going to do it for? Well, I'm going to pick Billy Hughes as the next one, mainly because he's got an interesting flight to show. And again, now the system goes into a wait mode that says, okay, press the handle judge switch to start the attempt. And so over in the simulator, I'm actually going to do that, and here it comes. Okay, the handle judge switch was clicked, and here is the attempt starting. Now Billy's preparation time is a little bit slower than Alex's. It'll take him close to a minute to get the engine started and warmed up and everything going good. You know, the typical F2A startup sequence that we all know. But after close to a minute into the flight, you'll start to see the sensor pulses coming from the sensor, actually from the simulator in this particular case. Shortly they'll start to show up as it gets down towards 2 minutes. Okay, here we are now. Billy is in the air flying, and the sensor is sending sensor pulses to the timer box, which is time stamping them very accurately, and then making them available to the WTT software, which retrieves them over a standard USB port. Oops, looks like we missed a lap. Yeah, we sure did. He probably flew below the sensor or something like that. But he finished his timed flight, even with the missed lap. As you can see now, we've got a completion, and the system says landed, and pretty quick it'll kick over to the results page. Notice that it's got an arrow next to lap 11 that says that one looks strange. If you look at the plot, it also looks very strange. So the normal thing is to go ahead and insert a lap at this point, because what inserting a lap does is it changes the end lap of the timed flight back to what it should be. And if you look at the timing end and the red in the upper, when I do an insert of a lap 11, you'll notice that it will change that back to something earlier, which is the appropriate ending time for the flight without a missed lap. And the flight time then was allocated at 292.3, which is in fact what Billy turned in that. Now I'm going to go back, I'm going to say, okay, that's complete, in for next flight. But at this point I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to leave it blank. I'm going to just hit carriage return. Notice that the console, which is the red bar at the bottom, is now back to the single digit enter key. At this point, anytime that the console is in that mode, you can type either Control L or Control D, and it will bring up a diagnostic listing, which is of little importance to the user, but more importantly is the log file of the previous flights since the current instance of WTT was started. As an example, this one, and you notice that immediately what shows up is Billy's most recent flight, and if I use the up arrow keys, I can scroll back up through there, and in fact right there on top of it is Alex's flight, or back down. And if you choose to, you can actually use the mouse, but although no mouse is actually required. When you're all finished looking at this, a Control L gets you back to where you were. At this point, you may say, okay, it's time to quit, so you type the M for main menu and a Q for quit. Returning to the command window that we established to begin this video, where we started the Transitrace software with the WTT command. If you look at the file list that is now in that directory, my Transitrace demo directory, you'll notice that there are more files and directories there now than were there when we first established it, which you can see at the top of the screen. Notice that there are several directories, such as fonts, registries, and so forth. These are directories where the WTT software uses and maintains data that persist for this particular installation of WTT. As an example, all of the logs that you saw before are in files which are in the logs directory. The registries that the system knows about are in files which are in the registries directory. If you use the Control P to capture an image of the screen, they will be in the screen images directory, and so forth. You will notice a number of other files there. There are execution files that are appropriate for a Windows environment, specifically the WTT.bat and so forth. There are, and then similar files for a Linux or an Apple environment, which are just the WTT with the asterisk after it, meaning an executable file. There are a couple of other programs that are available that you may run into eventually. One is to establish the size of the WTT execution screen. It is not resizable in real time, but the WTT_resize program allows you to set the size that is appropriate for your computer, and then save that window information. And in fact, it saves it into a file in the configuration directory, CONFD directory. Similarly, if you don't like the colors of the WTT and wish to play with colors or fonts, the WTT_config application will allow you to play with those things and ultimately save them in, again, the configuration file in the CONFD.d directory.